Is it working?
So we're going to try.
Okay, are we on? Okay, good. Hi again. So now I want to offer some thoughts about the path of the spiritual warrior, which is the path of the Bodhisattva. Warring on our own ignorance and confusion in order to clarify our own minds. At the same time, working in the world to be of benefit and support to beings who are wandering in confusion, to open the possibility for them of working with their own minds. Because we have seen in what we've talked about already this weekend, that working with our minds is our work. All of the spiritual work comes down to working with one's own mind, and yet there are also what is called in the Christian tradition works of virtue, benefiting beings. There's no contradiction between the two, any more than there's any contradiction between the truth of emptiness and the truth of suffering. So we've talked about the practices. We've touched on a couple ways in which we can understand very immediately and vividly through our own experience right here, right now, in this moment, how it is that the mind presents us with an opportunity in every moment to see directly that which is, or to continue to elaborate through the machinations, if I may put it that way, of self-grasping, to continue to elaborate forms and thoughts and actions and speech that are causes of suffering for ourselves and others. Suffering, you know, in the Buddha Dharma we talk about suffering a lot because it's what it's what we're called to lift away for the benefit of beings and our own minds. But it doesn't always mean acute misery and anguish and torment. Sometimes it simply refers to what sometimes I've heard described as the unscratchable itch of existence. Everything looks just fine and then isn't. Or you have what you want and then turns out you don't want that after all. Or you don't have something that you're glad not to have it, and then it turns out actually that is something that really would be beneficial and you then want it. So we're careening around it like mill wheels, what do you call them? Windmills. We're careening around, and that place of quietude that we experienced earlier today is always there within. It's not something, a manufactured state, that sense of balance and stillness and radical presence. It's not a manufactured state. It's to be discovered by our own work of purification. And in the Buddha Dharma, the term purification isn't about getting rid of impurities so much as it is of sweeping away that which obscures our ability to see the inherent primordial purity that is the essence of all appearances that come and go, that unchanging true nature that never comes and never goes. Always already here, we say. Always already here. But it takes courage to walk the path of the spiritual warrior. It takes courage to walk the path of the Bodhisattva. The courage is both the courage to confront and to work with and to render workable the mind that continues to carry forth habit patterns and that also is seeking freedom. It's also the mind that recognizes in the experience of other beings the seeds of confusion that are being sown, and that desires to see others as well freed from the forces of habit that are pernicious and deadening, and liberate others into an authentic path, an authentic, first of all, raising an authentic aspiration, then entering an authentic path, whatever that tradition may look like. Even if it's not a tradition, there is a way to walk from where we are to truth itself, naked and luminous. It doesn't always require that there be an external form that we would refer to as a spiritual tradition or a system of teachings or practices. Sometimes a person can simply sit down and wake up. That happens. It's happening in our time. That's not just something that happened back in the ages of the Buddhas that we can name. Myself, I think that if I were to be one of those people who could sit down and just wake up, it would have been because I sat down and listened carefully and sat down and practiced extensively and profoundly for a very long time, perhaps many lifetimes if we think in terms of many lifetimes. And then one day it ripens in some lifetime where maybe I have had no access to such things, but sometimes it can ripen just unexpectedly. Somebody drops something and your mind spills out, and you're never the same again. I mean, we've all read, or many of us have read tales of remarkable awakenings, but they're not to hanker for, they're simply to be grateful for, because all of them are proof that the natural state is already here. We're not anywhere away from it ever. I really just want, if I don't say anything that you take home with you, please take that. Oh, you're already home. If I say anything that you remember from this weekend, please remember that. The natural state is natural because it's your true nature. So I want to read to you first, before I speak anymore, I want to read for you a piece written first in 2015 and then revised recently, that's called Purification and Transformation, Field Notes for Spiritual Warriors in the Changing Times. So I want to comment first about changing times. In the prophecies, the indigenous prophecies of the Americas, there have been, and I'm not a great student of this, but I have this information from people who have been directly given this particular piece of information. There are prophecies that speak of a period of time when profound changes will occur on the earth and among the beings who are part of the earth. It's not that we live on Mother Earth, it's that we are the earth. There's nothing that we are or have that doesn't come from our mother, the earth, and her meeting with sky. The prophecy that was communicated to me by my first teacher, whom I've mentioned, was this: that, this was quite a while ago that this prophecy was told to me, and much longer ago that the prophecy was first, I guess, received, that the elements are awaiting direction from the minds of human beings. And if we human beings are able to make the necessary changes in our minds, the transformation required for planetary purification and profound shift will not be as difficult for us. But if we're not able to make the necessary changes and transformations ourselves quickly enough, the elements will do it for us. Earth, air, wind, water, fire, space. And not just the elements in their physical manifestations, although certainly we are well aware at the moment of how the elements are making themselves manifestly responsible for making change, but also the inner elements that are present as energetics, as energies at a more subtle level, which also are part of our mind makeup. When I first heard this prophecy, sometimes somebody will say something and it kind of rings in your mind like a bell from then on. You can't do anything with it particularly cognitively. It's like I didn't know what to do with that information specifically, but I never stopped remembering it actively. It stayed active in my mind, that piece of information. And when it was enunciated, it was a period when many people thought of what are called times as being in the future. Well, it really wasn't in the future then either, and that was somewhat evident, but now it's totally evident that we are in the changing times because everything is changing. And those things that don't appear to be changing yet have the potential to change, and perhaps we'll be able to do so as things move at the elemental level and at the level of mind. Sometimes a good idea, a right thought, has to germinate for a very long time in the dark before we see the first sprout poking up through the earth. Maybe even as it gets stronger, breaking open a rock. But the fact that we don't see it yet doesn't mean it's not there. So this idea of our being able to cooperate and collaborate with the elemental energies of life for the benefit of all beings, including planetary being. This stayed with me as a very luminous jewel of wisdom in my mind for all these years. This was a very long time ago I was given this information. And it's taken me a long time to see how I could be a part of that. We are all a part of it. That's what I saw. We are all a part of it, and we choose how. We choose what gifts that we have already are to be well used in a period of time. We choose to some degree where we come down on the planet, but to a large degree, that's not so much a matter of choice until we're fully adults, and then we can think that we're choosing. But I think as those who have the vocation of bodhisattva, spiritual warrior, I think like beings in Tibetan tradition, in stories I've read, and in other traditions, Native American and so on, I think sometimes we're placed like a prayer flag or a prayer stick. Sometimes I think we're placed somewhere. And I think in any event, whether we are or not placed in some way, wherever we are, we can say, I am here placed at this time. And that opens up the potential that place and our meeting with it have for becoming a node of planetary transformation and of the transformation of the planetary mind, which is our mind also. So with that brief introduction, I want to read this piece that's called Field Notes for Spiritual Warriors in the Changing Times. So we've established that we're spiritual warriors because we're bodhisattvas, and that these are certainly the changing times. I don't think there's much basis for doubt about that. So what are field notes? Field notes, as I've used them in my life and work, are the notes you take out with you when you go to do your work that remind you of its basic principles, give you a place where you can note down what your observations are, and align you over and over again with what your intention is in going out into the field in the first place, whether it's for research, for activism, for prayer. You may go to a field to pray. That would be an opportunity for field notes. You may take a field trip with students, and then you want people to have field notes. There's always a place in the field notes for your notes that you write down about your observations and what they suggest to you, what you see, what you hear, and how your mind is working with it. It's little notations, sometimes with a date and time. Everybody uses their field notes differently. Sometimes you'll go to a bookstore and you'll find field notes that you can purchase, a book that's set up for a field expedition. So there's a place for your observations, for your questions, for your organizing principles, and for your notes and questions that will make up your report at the end, which is mostly for you, but may also be for somebody you work with. But field notes for spiritual warriors in the changing times, it's for you to make your own little field note book out of it if you wish to. For now, I want to give you the organizing principles. So, purification and transformation, field notes for spiritual warriors in the changing times, compiled by this person here at the closing of the year 2015, when motherly planet Earth and the minds, bodies, and beauteous expressions of her children appear as if buffeted by dangerous winds and currents, and the fate of our small shared co-created world has been perhaps never before so directly in the hands of human beings. Revised and reissued in the spring of the year 2020, as pandemic coronavirus is sweeping the planet, a mirror for those with eyes to see, a great bell for those with ears to hear, an imperative for those with voice to speak. 1. These are the changing times that have been foretold. What is to change? Mind of beings, mind of humanity, our mind, my mind, your mind. 2. Purification and transformation. Purifying and transforming are the dynamic, the work, the opportunity, the requirement of the changing times. Earth and the minds of beings are being purified. What does this mean? Seeds of ignorance and confusion are being uprooted. Sprouts of wisdom and right relationship are becoming visible. 3. Critical responsibility and power of human beings to engage this process consciously. Purification is happening with or without our conscious awareness of it or our agreement and cooperation. The elements are awaiting direction from the minds of human beings. If we don't make the changes quickly enough, the elements will do it for us, and this will be harder on all. Venerable Dahani Iwahu. Our purifying and transforming, our waking up to the nature of reality and to right relationship with all that is, this is what is required in order for us to cooperate with and guide the elements in purifying mind and matter. Purifying by earth, air, fire, water, and sound. Impurities surface, confusion, poisons, greed, hatred, etc., in bodies and minds of beings, plants, planet, to be released, swept away, transformed. Earth and earthly bodies extrude, shake, erupt, by great pressure, releasing inner pressure, bringing impurities to light. Air and winds, gentle and wild, stir and sweep away. Fire disinfects and transmutes to clear light all illusions of materiality. Water cleanses stagnancy, dilutes pollution. Impurities rise to surface to be swept away on the current. Pure water flows. Sounds of truth vibrate away untruth, purifying consciousness. The hidden dis-ease, poison, ignorance, confusion must surface, literally must come to light in order to release. Five, the surfacing is the cleansing. When result appears, necessity ceases. That means when fruit appears, seed is no more. When result appears, cause is no more. As impurity surfaces, it is on its way out of body, mind, emotion, energy field, consciousness, family, culture, nation, planet, era. At this point in the purification process, the ignorance, confusion, and toxicity can become more visible and perceptible, may be felt and experienced as acute. This is when it can most easily be recognized consciously and released by our empowered choice. 6, our part is to let it go. Tendency is to grasp at the ephemeral, artifactual appearance as real. Let it go. 7, how to let it go. Lift and hold steady your aspiration, your intention, your conscious choice. Do not be distracted by temporary, adventitiously arising appearances. Neither grasp, nor elaborate, nor push away ignorance, confusion, fear, illness, suffering. Contemplate the emptiness of created appearances. hew to what you know to be true, whether you feel it or not. Rely upon mind's attunement to truth and right relationship, and not upon the ever-changing waves of feeling and emotion. Hold the light. Hold close your knowledge of intrinsic perfection as essence of all phenomena, beings, appearances, arisings. Eight. In the world today, this purification process displays sharply, starkly. Do not be confused about what is happening. Keep inner compass tuned to true north. When hearing ignorance, speak the truth you know. When seeing cruelty, act from love and hold that flame aloft. When ill, remember emptiness, intrinsic perfection, impermanence, and take your medicine. And then it gives two pieces for recitation, one of which we'll do today. Recite the prayer of Kuntuzangpo, dedicating the merit, which is love, for the liberation of all beings from fear and ignorance. This is transformation. 9. When afraid, discouraged, in despair, remember. Great courage comes from great love, great compassion. Cultivate love and compassion, and fear will have no place to root. Others are also afraid, discouraged, despairing. Lend them your courage. Encourage them. Give them heart. In speech and action, show how love and compassion give courage. If you don't yet know how, find out. 10. Hold steady in clarity, compassion, and love to light up the darkness for all. Read, contemplate, and emulate the lives and teachings of bodhisattvas, lovers of beings and worlds, knowers of truth, such as Guru Padmasambhava, the Dalai Lama, Paramahansa Yogananda, Rumi, Hafiz, Jesus, Gandhi, Elie Wiesel, Etty Hillesum, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Immaculée Bagiza, and countless others in every tradition and time. Read, contemplate, and emulate their lives and teachings. 11. We can't know when our tests will come. Be ready. Always know the condition of your own mind. Exercise constantly and consistently the vision that sees true, the speech that rings true, the act that shows true. In danger, your armor is emptiness, radiant with bodhicitta, great love and compassion, in mind that knows the emptiness of created appearances. So armored, your body cannot be harmed. So armored, your body can be harmed, but you cannot be harmed. Padmasambhava in the Tibetan Book of the Dead says, emptiness cannot be harmed by emptiness. The unconditioned cannot be harmed by the unconditioned. 12. We are no longer ordinary people. We are bodhisattvas, spiritual warriors, warring on fear and ignorance. In ourselves first and continuously, over and over and over. That is practice. In our world and time, as beacons of light, radiant points of clarity and love, and as transformers for ourselves and others. 13. When called, wield the wisdom sword. Wield it with mind and heart of the great love for the liberation of all. I use these field notes. I go back to them again and again to be reminded of what I already know and to be challenged and coerced by my highest aspirations into a rigorous honesty with myself about what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking, and what my capacity is for courage and for generating love that pervades all, that holds nothing apart. There was a time, not too many years ago, when something occurred that made me wonder how I was going to keep on being faithful to my commitment to love not all beings only. That can be kind of abstract. Loving all beings, then it's kind of a mess. That's kind of like loving all sentient beings. It could be very abstract. If you say to love every being, it's no longer abstract at all. It's right in your face. It's right there. Every being means the one who's right in front of you at any moment, or the one you hear about that you don't want to hear about, whatever it may be. So I wrote a few reminders to myself at that moment. You will hear in these reminders the resonance of this piece, the field notes. But I wasn't using the field notes to write this other piece. I was trying to speak to myself. Excuse me for that little bang. I was trying to speak with honesty to myself, and I wrote it as a letter to my students. Reminders, beloved friends, trustworthy companions on the path. Today I write to share a few reminders that I myself am taking to heart this morning. Now, remember that all appearances, all phenomena are open in nature, not solid or self-existing, for they and we arise dependent upon causes and abide dependent upon conditions. Remember that the true nature of everything is like space. And like space, true nature is never changed or affected in any way by what arises, abides for an instant, and again dissolves. All beings and appearances are ever one with truth itself. So let your gaze at another rest on truth love rather than on the appearances. Recognize phenomena and beings as vividly present and dynamic while remembering their open, empty, unchanging essence nature. See things and beings simply as they are. Neither grasp at appearances, internal or external, nor push them away, nor elaborate them. And then here came the challenge. Now, today, and every day, every moment, walk out into the world and among beings as a lamp of Dharma, of truth inseparable from love. We can never really know how events will play out, but we do know that we are fully responsible for our role in the process. We are potent. We can and must call on ourselves and remind one another to live what we know to be true, especially when we doubt it. That all beings in existence have both clarity and confusion of mind, and in essence are inseparable from the pure, open, stainless, true nature. So then greet each one in that knowledge. Hold mind steady in that knowledge. Rely on that knowledge instead of on the ever-changing appearances, sounds, and feelings that endlessly come and go, disturbing mind and behavior. When Garchen Rinpoche was imprisoned for 20 years by the Chinese, he practiced secretly the 37 bodhisattva practices, and practicing on their essence came to love unconditionally those who held him captive and tortured him. Men came to respect and love him. He was a light in the darkness. Let us follow his example. Rather than following our emotions and the ups and downs of events and thoughts, let us follow his example, lighting up the darkness in our own minds, shining the light of clarity and love to others. In this way, we walk confidently with all we meet. The work that takes place in our minds and the work that takes place in our relationship with the world are not different. They're completely interactive. If I am observing my mind and recognizing the seeds of confusion beginning to spread, I can be very sure that as I'm looking at the world and its appearances in my life experience, I will see the effects of those seeds of poison and confusion spreading. So in that way, very actively, very consciously, very intentionally, we can use appearances as the mirror, as we've spoken about already yesterday and today. These appearances then become very, very directly the mirror for us to understand what's happening with our own minds and to take responsibility for it. This work is both very subtle and very, I would say just very, very visible, very tangible in the world, because we are in the world, we are of the world. In this lifetime, here we are with bodies, physical experiences. Everything that we think, the way we hold reality, the stories we tell ourselves, and also the great aspirations that we formulate and seek to be loyal to, these all reflect in our physical experience and in all the appearances that mirror back to us who we are in this lifetime, in this very moment, right here, right now. So I think about pandemia, for example, a global phenomenon that threatens so many people with illness and death and complete loss of everything that they own, and privation, starvation even threatens cultures with change, societies, towns foundering, people going under economically, not knowing how they're going to eat or feed their families. Then the specter of death and dying, and extreme illness, and then difficult recoveries, isolation and seclusion, and feeling abandoned, being abandoned. These are all conditions that we can apprehend in our minds as we receive information about them in the world. We are always interchanging information. The information that we receive on the news can be overwhelming. It can also be deeply informed and informing for us. I myself follow the news with some measure of moderation because I want to know what are the gross and large and broad and deep currents of thought that human beings are dealing with. Sometimes I've heard people describe the major thought forms that are affecting humanity as if they are great winds sweeping the globe and all of us being affected by them. We can be affected by them to be stirred or to be more confused. We can be stirred to clarity, or we can be stirred to deeper confusion, possible despair. The note that is sounding through the field notes is the note of courage. And courage comes from compassion. That's a direct teaching from His Eminence Chogyam Trungpa. And great courage comes from great compassion. And the greatest courage, he said, comes from love. It's a bit easier for us as sentient beings, as human beings, to have compassion for people, other people, or critters, than it is for us to have love for them in the relative experience. Everybody can have some degree of like mind or empathy when we see suffering in another. So it's relatively easy to formulate a wish that that person might not be suffering, that suffering might be dispersed. And you can have that kind of a thought even about somebody who isn't someone you really care for or care about generally, but you see the suffering and you don't want them to suffer. Love is a much higher degree of interrelationship and commitment. It's very challenging to wish the greatest possible happiness for somebody who is making you unhappy, so to speak, making you unhappy. That's the way we speak about it. Who is a proximate cause of your apparent cause of your distress, or even just mildly annoying. But wishing for happiness for beings includes wishing them not to suffer. So love includes compassion, and compassion can generate love. And together they are what gives rise to altruistic courage, to real courage. Do you remember some years ago there was a young man who was going bouldering in Utah? Bouldering is going through the canyons and negotiating the boulders, the huge rocks in the canyons. And it's very dangerous because the rocks, although they appear enormous and immovable, move. And his arm was pinioned, and he was caught. He couldn't get out. Nobody knew where he was. He was in a deep slot canyon. I don't remember his name. I would like to honor him by saying his name, but I don't remember it. And I forget how many days he was there, but he was clearly dying. He went to fevers and so on. His arm was completely pinioned between the boulder and the rock wall. And he figured out how to cut his arm off, how to amputate his arm. He had a penknife. He figured out how to do it. I'm not going to go into the details, but... And then carrying his arm above his head so that he wouldn't die from loss of blood, he managed to stumble his way out of this slot canyon and encountered a young family who was taking a picnic, I guess, or a walk. And anyway, he was saved. But he saved himself. He saved himself, and he was asked, when you read about things like that, or you learn about something happening to somebody you know even, often you think, would I have been able to do that, what he did to manage to amputate his arm with a penknife? Would I have been able to do that, or would I have just said, okay, here I am. If I were going to survive, I would say next time I'd be a little more careful about a boulder with that shape. But since I'm clearly not surviving, I'm going to just go ahead and say, well, that was a great trip, and and let it all go. But no, what he did was remember his family and their anguish when they would discover, who knows when, maybe years later, that he had died in that way. It was his love for them that gave him the courage to sever a part of his own body in order to escape. That was an act of spiritual warriorship, what he had to combat, of bodhisattva commitment to save beings from suffering. Most of us won't have a call that dramatic, but many of us both have and will, and you don't know when it's coming. It may be something very silent and solitudinous. There may not be other people involved. You may be by yourself like him, or you may be by yourself just in a room somewhere, and suddenly you realize your body is giving up its life and that you're going to be dying right then. Or it may be that you need to take care of somebody at the cost of your own well-being. It could be anything that you're called to. It doesn't have to be something dramatic, but be ready. And that means have the mind that is always ready to respond. And for that, we need to be able to know our mind and to work with our own transformations and confusions in a very clear and direct way. And it's for that purpose that I want to share with you the practice of what's called the prayer of Kuntuzangpo. Kuntuzangpo refers in this usage to the primordial Buddha, and he's enunciating in this practice a prayer, and in that prayer are contained the instructions, the only instructions you will need for living your life as a spiritual warrior. I hope it's okay that I'm reading a number of pieces to you this afternoon. They're pieces that I want you to have in your mind, and I could try to give you the same information, but the power of speech, of a teacher or a writer actually choosing carefully the specific words and working them on the page, the way an artist makes a work of art. This is something that is also a path of warriorship. So many of you, no doubt, already are familiar with the prayer of Kuntuzangpo. As I read it, I'm going to make comments probably as I go along, because the method for transforming confusion to clarity is in the prayer. And we've talked about it, but it's very succinct here. This prayer is taken from a treatise, a Dzogchen treatise. And the instructions are to read this prayer aloud. These instructions aren't included here for some reason. It's not there. At the end of the prayer, it's not there. 45? Oh, yeah, here it is, 45, yeah. The specific, read it any time and every time, but then it's specifically prescribed to read it during the solar or lunar eclipse, during an earthquake, or when the earth rumbles, at the solstices or the new year. I don't know where we are in the cycle of moon, sun, earthquakes, and so on, but we're going to read it aloud now. And will you join me in reading it?
And people have it in their.
It was on the download. It was available for the.
People have it in the house. They have it physically, because usually we dedicate this.
But you have no idea who's listening.
No,
Right? They may never have heard of it in their lives before. The prayer of Kuntuzangpo, the primordial Buddha, Samantabhadra. And what's happening in this prayer is the identification of the ground, the primordial ground, and the two paths of awareness and unawareness. And what happens as unawareness elaborates into it through the machinations of the different afflictive emotions and mind states, how they are transformed. This is a method. This prayer is a method. This is not just something to recite and forget about. This is field notes also, the original field notes. Ho, everything, appearance and existence, samsara and nirvana, has a single ground, yet two paths and two fruitions, and magically displays as awareness or unawareness. Through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, may all beings become Buddhas, completely perfected in the abode of the Dharma Dhatu. The ground of all is uncompounded, and the self-arising great expanse beyond expression has neither the name samsara nor nirvana. Realizing just this, you are a Buddha. Not realizing this, you are a being wandering in samsara. I pray that all you beings of the three realms may realize the true meaning of the inexpressible ground. I, Kuntuzangpo, have realized the truth of this ground, free from cause and condition, which is just this self-arising awareness. It is unstained by outer expression and inner thought, affirmation or denial, and is not defiled by the darkness of unmindfulness. Thus, this self-manifesting display is free from defects. I, Kuntuzangpo, abide as intrinsic awareness. Even though the three realms were to be destroyed, there is no fear. There is no attachment to the five desirable qualities of sense objects. In self-arising consciousness, free of thoughts, there is neither solid form nor the five poisons. In the unceasing clarity of awareness, singular in essence, there yet arises the display of the five wisdoms. From the ripening of these five wisdoms, the five original Buddha families emerge, and through the expanse of their wisdom, the 42 peaceful Buddhas appear. Through the arising power of the five wisdoms, the 60 wrathful Herukas manifest. Thus the ground awareness is never mistaken or wrong. I, Kuntuzangpo, am the original Buddha of all, and through this prayer of mine, may all you beings who wander in the three realms of samsara realize this self-arising awareness, and may your great wisdom spontaneously increase. My emanations will continuously manifest in billions of unimaginable ways, appearing in forms to help you beings who can be trained. Through my compassionate prayer, may all of you beings who wander in the three realms of samsara escape from the 6 life forms. From the beginning, you beings are deluded because you do not recognize the awareness of the ground. Being thus unmindful of what occurs is delusion, the very state of unawareness and the cause of going astray. This is where it is identified, the nature of the ground and how one separates one's mind from that ground, or not separates, but wavers. From this delusive state comes a sudden fainting away, and then a subtle consciousness of wavering fear. From that wavering, there arises a separation of self and the perception of others as enemies. This is what I refer to as the original error, innocent error of misapprehension, misunderstanding. Gradually, the tendency of separation strengthens, and from this, the circle of samsara begins. Then the emotions of the 5 poisons develop. The actions of these emotions are endless. You beings lack awareness because you are unmindful, and this is the basis of your going astray. Through my prayer, may all you beings recognize your intrinsic awareness. The use of the word unmindful here, I think, is actually pointing to awareness, that we are not in a state of awareness, rather than the kind of contemporary colloquial meaning of unmindful. Innate unawareness means unmindfulness and a distraction. Imputing unawareness means dualistic thoughts towards self and others. Both kinds of unawareness are the basis for the delusion of all beings. Through Kuntu Zangpo's prayer, may all you beings wandering in samsara clear away the dark fog of unmindfulness, clear away the clinging thoughts of duality. May you recognize your own intrinsic awareness. Dualistic thoughts create doubt. From subtle attachment to this dualistic turn of mind, dualistic tendencies become stronger and thicker. Food, wealth, clothes, home, and friends, the 5 objects of the senses, and your beloved family, all these things cause torment by creating longing and desire. These are all worldly delusions. The activities of grasping and clinging are endless. When the fruition of attachment ripens, you are born as a hungry ghost, tormented by coveting and desiring, miserable, starving, and thirsty. Through Kuntu Zangpo's prayer, may all you desirous and lustful beings who have attachments neither reject longing desires nor accept attachment to desires. Let your consciousness relax in its own natural state. Then your awareness will be able to hold its own. May you achieve the wisdom of perfect discernment. Do you recognize here what we've been speaking about yesterday and today? The non-doing. The point of confusion arising, and you neither reject it nor accept it. You simply rest in the natural state. You rest in your own mind's awareness, and then your awareness will be able to hold its own. And this is the key instruction throughout this prayer. When external objects appear, the subtle consciousness of fear will arise. From this fear, the habit of anger becomes stronger and stronger. Finally, hostility comes, causing violence and murder. When the fruition of this anger ripens, you will suffer in hell by boiling and burning. Through Kuntu Zangpo's prayer, you beings of the 6 realms, when strong anger arises for you, neither reject nor accept it. Instead, relax in the natural state and achieve the wisdom of clarity. When your mind becomes full of pride, there will arise thoughts of competition and humiliation. As this pride becomes stronger and stronger, you will experience the suffering of quarrels and abuse. When the fruition of this karma ripens, you will be born in the God realms and experience the suffering of change and falling to lower rebirths. Through Kuntu Zangpo's prayer, may you beings who develop pride, let your consciousness relax in the natural state. Then your awareness will be able to hold its own. May you achieve the wisdom of equanimity. Please note the continuing use of the instruction to relax. We've heard this before. It's very important. By increasing the habit of duality, by praising yourself and denigrating others, your competitive mind will lead you to jealousy and fighting, and you will be born in the jealous God realm where there is much killing and injury. From the result of that killing, you will fall into the hell realm. Through Kuntu Zangpo's prayer, when jealousy and competitive thoughts arise, do not grasp them as enemies. Just relax in ease. Then consciousness can hold its own natural state. May you achieve the wisdom of unobstructed action. By being distracted, careless, and unmindful, you beings will become dull, foggy, and forgetful. By being unconscious and lazy, you will increase your ignorance, and the fruition of this ignorance will be to wander helplessly in the animal realm. Through Kuntu Zangpo's prayer, may you beings who have fallen into the dark pit of ignorance shine the light of mindfulness and thereby achieve wisdom free from thought. All you beings of the three realms are actually identical to Buddhas, the ground of all, but your misunderstanding of the ground causes you to go astray, so you act without aim. The 6 karmic actions are a delusion like a dream. I am the primordial Buddha, here to train the 6 kinds of being through all my manifestations. Through Kunto Zanpo's prayer, may all you beings without exception attain enlightenment in the state of Dharma Dhatu. Aho! Hereafter, whenever a very powerful yogin with his or her awareness radiant and free from delusion recites this very powerful prayer, then all who hear it will achieve enlightenment within 3 lifetimes. During a solar or lunar eclipse, during an earthquake, or when the earth rumbles, at the solstices or the new year, you should visualize Kunto Zanpo, and if you pray loudly so all can hear, the beings of the 3 realms will be gradually liberated from suffering through the prayer of the yogin, and will finally achieve enlightenment. I trust that you recognize, in hearing this prayer, some of the same instructions that are in the field notes and that are in our discussion of pandemia, and in our discussion of a secret practice and the need to do practice of non-doing. It's the non-doing practice that recognizes, that relaxes and recognizes in the natural state, what's called the natural state, the intrinsic true nature state. So this is another, this prayer is on the website for you to download, and it is another, I wish we could reduce these into little capsules of wisdom that would be embedded here, so that when we just look in the mirror, we see the whole thing just expand and open, and the whole prayer and all its meanings are right there, visible to us. But in the meanwhile, we have paper. We have things on our phones we can read. This is an indispensable, this not the book I'm referring to, this is the Drikun Kagyu prayer book, but this prayer, the prayer of Kunto Zanpo, is an indispensable guide to the transformation of samsaric appearances to their actual essence nature. Don't neglect to download this and to begin reciting it on a regular basis. It gives you a method that's immediately accessible. And I know this is a reading occasion here for me today with you. I'm just going to read everything that's been meaningful to me. So in the Bardo Thotrol, the instructions for the Bardo, the same 6 ignorances are named, and the instruction to recognize all appearances as oneself is given. This is one of the prayers that's given in the Bardo teachings. Inspiration prayer for deliverance from the dangerous pathway of the Bardo. Homage to the gurus, yidams, and dakinis. With their great love, may they lead us on the path. And then it says, when through confusion I wander in samsara, that's the ignorance, on the undistracted light path of study, reflection, and meditation. And then it asks that the gurus of the sacred lineage go before, the consorts, the hosts of dakinis behind. Help me to cross the Bardo's dangerous pathway and bring me to the perfect Buddha state. The next one that's mentioned is when through ignorance I wander in samsara. And then, when through intense aggression I wander in samsara, when through intense pride I wander in samsara, when through intense desire I wander in samsara, when through intense envy I wander in samsara, when through strong unconscious tendencies I wander in samsara, when through fierce confused projections I wander in samsara. And then it speaks to the elements. I'm going to read the last one. When through fierce, confused projections I wander in samsara, on the light path of abandoning all fear, may the blessed ones, peaceful and wrathful, go before me, the host of dakinis, queens of space behind me. Help me to cross the Bardo's dangerous pathway and bring me to the perfect Buddha state. Now here the elements are engaged. May the element of space not rise up as an enemy. May I see the realm of the blue Buddha. May the element of water not rise up as an enemy. May I see the realm of the white Buddha. May the element of earth not rise up as an enemy. May I see the realm of the yellow Buddha. May the element of fire not rise up as an enemy. May I see the realm of the red Buddha. May the element of air not rise up as an enemy. May I see the realm of the green Buddha. May the rainbow of the elements not rise up as enemies. May I see the realms of all the Buddhas. May the sounds, lights, and rays not rise up as enemies. May I see the infinite realms of the peaceful and wrathful ones. Now listen carefully. You've already heard this teaching elaborated in prose. Now here it is in a verse that's a request for deliverance from the dangers of the Bardo passage. May I know all the sounds as my own sound. May I know all the lights as my own light. May I know all the rays as my own ray. May I spontaneously know the Bardo as myself. May I attain the realms of the three kayas, the three absolute bodies of the Buddha. What I'm doing here by reading you all these pieces, rather than engaging in more of a discussion kind of a teaching this afternoon, I just want to pour out to you and pour into you so that as we continue through this particular Bardo called Pandemia, and through the Bardo of the rest of this life, and through the Bardo of the moment before death, and for the Bardo of dying, and for the Bardo after death, these gems of wisdom and courage and all-encompassing, all-penetrating, all-pervading love. So I'm pouring out, and you are willing receptacles. If you're still here, I think you are, right? And you're willing receptacles, please take what's being poured into you and let it ripen. And if you want to know what some of the pieces are and how to find them, and not all of them are on the website to download, I'll be happy to provide that information. You just send an inquiry to the office, and I will ask them to compile the names and email addresses, and then can just send them out to you. One of the warm bodies who happens to be in the temple today for this event is from Israel. And so I want to read a beautiful piece from the Talmud. It's so exquisitely perfect for us for right now. Do not be daunted by the insurmountability of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. And then some of you may remember Carlos Castaneda's book, what was it called? The Teachings of Don Juan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so here are two of the teachings that Castaneda put forth in that book, which have had a big impact on my life, and perhaps they will also on yours, an impact for the good, for sure. So Don Juan is saying to his student, there are some people who are very careful about the nature of their acts. Their happiness is to act with the full knowledge that they don't have time. Therefore, their acts have a peculiar power. Acts have power, especially when the person acting knows that those acts are his last battle. There is a strange, consuming happiness in acting with the full knowledge that whatever one is doing may very well be one's last act on earth. I recommend that you reconsider your life and bring your acts into that light. And then he says, if you don't think your life is going to last forever, what are you waiting for? Why the hesitation to change? Focus your attention on the link between you and your death. Focus your attention on the fact that you don't have time, and let your acts flow accordingly. Let each of your acts be your last battle on earth. Only under those conditions will your acts have their rightful power. Otherwise, they will be, for as long as you live, the acts of a timid person. I want to take a little break, very short. I'm just running over and coming right back. And then I want to read you there are some questions that came in that I'd like to address if we have time. And then I want to read you one last piece. Okay? So I'll be right back. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Bingo. I find myself wanting to know more about death. These are questions from people who've been listening. The main impetus is my yearning to help non-human beings when they leave this lifetime. This is someone who has a lot of experience working with animals. But I don't know how to do that, to help non-human beings when they leave this lifetime. So I'm turning to trying to understand human death in preparation for I think about volunteering for hospice care to learn what I can from the passing of others, but I feel ill-equipped to be of assistance. I'm reticent to contact a hospice organization because I don't have anything to offer them, and because honestly, my main hope to prepare for my death is self-interested. Maybe I wouldn't be a very good helper because of that. Do you think volunteering for a hospice is fruitful for a person like me? Would a more academic approach, study, reading, meditation, be better? If you're watching today, my dear, I'm laughing, as usual. Okay, let's first acknowledge that you're going to die. And what's the difference between you dying and a horse dying? Consciousness, conscious awareness, ability to work with your experience consciously, but we don't know that others don't do that. In fact, we think they don't. But what do we really know about what's going through the mind of a horse at the time of death? I don't assume that we know anything about that. I've been with a horse who died, and I saw the light fade from the eyes, and I saw the same mute acceptance of death that I've seen with humans that I've been with when dying. A sentient being is a sentient being. I'm not sure there's a huge difference except for our cognition level and our ability to reflect on our experience, but I'm not at all certain that other beings don't have that same ability. I don't know how we would know that they do or don't. Our tests of how to see what brain activity is going on in beings, human and otherwise, are tests that are made by human beings. So there's a little observational bias there, perhaps, and they're also done with beings who cannot communicate verbally with us, at least. And so we're lacking a lot of information there, which makes the conclusions we arrive at a little suspect to me in the terms of their being extremely limited. Well, I went off on a little tangent there, didn't I? So let me come back. You know from all the years that we've known each other that I will always say motivation is key. Motivation is the most important element in whether your intention and its actualization are beneficial or not. So I'm hearing here the note of you questioning your motivation because you're saying that you're thinking of your hope to prepare for your own death is self-interested. You can change that right this minute. There's no reason that it has to remain self-interested. There's a very simple way to do this. So you want to prepare for your own death, and therefore you're thinking maybe hospice work might be beneficial. I'm not going to touch that right this minute, but you're concerned about the self-interest involved, so here's what you do. Very simply, you say, for the benefit of all beings, I seek to understand how to prepare for my death as a human being in this lifetime, and to offer it for the liberation of all. Done. In the Tibetan word for prayer, that as it's been explained to me, the word is munlam, and it doesn't mean prayer in the sense that we might use it with a deity. It means mind path. And so when we form an intention of the kind that I just enunciated, and over again we enunciate that same altruistic intention for something that may also be of self-interest, the mind begins to follow the aspirational intention, and the mind is transformed from the self-grasping intent to the altruistic intent. I speak really directly from experience on that. I can guarantee that the well-intentioned articulation of the altruistic intention, even for what seems the most self-interested act, can transform the basis for the self-interest into a truly loving, vast intention for the benefit of all. You can test me on that if you'd like. I would love to have you do that. So, you also, in the beginning of your question, speak about your yearning to help non-humans at the time of death, but you don't know how to do that. And you said that's the first thing you said, that you have a yearning to do that. Why don't you follow that? You have a lot of experience in working with animals. Why don't you work with them at the time of death and find out directly for yourself what is most important in that work? Do you remember I came and sat with the big cats, whom I couldn't see, and also with the Michael Vick dogs at the shelter, and I couldn't interact with them directly because they were penned and dangerous still. They hadn't been tamed yet. And I was able to feel them. I was able to sense their good-heartedness and their confusion of mind about how they had been treated and what they'd been forced to experience. And do you remember my speaking about that, how direct it was, the sense of connection with them? The main thing, as I said yesterday when talking about being with the dying, the main thing I've learned is to be there, to be present, radical presence, unadorned, undecorated, naked, bare, just being present. Not thinking you have to know something, just being present. That's an act of love and compassion. I want to encourage you to follow what you call your yearning. And at the same time, you can be doing reading and practice that relates to your own death. There's no choice between those two things. But if you yearn, and I don't think I've ever heard you use that word before, if you yearn to be with animals as they die, please go and be with animals as they die, and be a compassionate, kind presence. Even if they're in a cage and you can't reach them physically, you can still be present. Look, here we are present, right now, here. You can be present with an animal as it's dying. Remember the little miniature horse? We stood there and watched, and it was clear that that little horse wasn't going to survive. And we stood there and watched. I felt as if we were very present together with that little being. You already have some of this experience, and you yearn for this. Please follow your yearning. It will take you where you want to be. Okay? Thanks. And I'm not, in the moment, going to recommend a more academic approach. I think I want you hands-on, because that's what you want. Even if you can't put your hands on, you can put your heart on. Go sit with the people who are dying. The four-legged people, the two-legged people, the winged people, the insect people, whoever you want to sit with. And then, we can communicate about it if you want to. When we recognize a harmful pattern of thought or behavior and recognize our weakness trying to not engage, in that harmful pattern? Is it best to remove ourselves from the temptation? To elaborate, the pattern could be attachment to food, people, drugs, etc., or behavior such as manipulation to attempt to control a situation or person. Is it better to continue to confront that attachment and not engage or remove oneself from the situation? Well, there's a whole section in the 37 practices that's about harmful companions and harmful situations that are challenging or difficult for your mind. So I think the answer to this question is just very direct. It really depends on what you can handle. If your intention is stable, your action is stable, your intention is stable, and you have a practice that you can rely on a regular basis to help you do that work of transformation of afflictive emotions as you go along, then you may be able to stay in the what we'll call the potentially harmful situation, and yet make progress spiritually in your practice and in clarifying your mind. Sometimes the very best thing is to put yourself in the situation that's most dangerous for your commitments, because then you are truly challenged. But that is assuming you have a stable practice, that you have a seat. It's like when you're learning to ride, you have to learn how to have a good seat, so that whatever the horse does, you remain seated, because you don't want to fly off the horse. That's not good. I've done that. That's not a good thing. So it's like that in our spiritual practice, our inner practice. We want stability, regularity, and consistency, so that little by little by little, we're making progress in clarifying our confusions and obscurations and strengthening our intention and our ability to commit to it and carry through on that commitment. So if you're wavering in your practice, or you have very little practice, it's better to not right away at the beginning, as a beginning practitioner, it's better not to be in the harmful situation to the point where you're overwhelmed by it, because we're not strong enough yet. This is sort of common sense. It's spiritual common sense, or common spiritual sense. So you have to gauge what you're capable of handling. And you'll know that. You'll know it by the condition of your mind. It'll be obvious. For example, if you're addicted to a substance and you want to hang out with the people who are addicted because you think your spiritual mind might be of benefit to them, and you love them, and you want to hang out with them and continue to know them well and care for them, that's great. But as you find yourself kind of leaning back to the old ways of being with them, note the leaning happening, that's a warning to you. Straighten up. Maybe your practice can help you, but have a strong practice if you're going to go right into the middle of what's challenging for you. And then if you have a strong practice and you're still overwhelmed, go in and out, in and out, in and out. You can always step away. In most situations, you can step away for a bit, whether it's for an hour, whether it's, for a couple of years, whether it's for good. Sometimes you abandon situations and companions with the abandoning that is not abandoning. The abandonment that is not abandonment. In other words, you step away from that which you cannot handle responsibly, without doing damage to your own practice, your own intention. You step away from the people or the situations and never abandon them. Meaning, you never abandon your knowledge that they are, in essence, just like you, Buddhas, and your great compassion for their confusion and suffering as for your own, and your intention on their behalf to liberate all beings, and to see them become Buddhas also. In other words, you never abandon the being, but you may abandon the proximity to the being because you know that you can't handle it, and remain true to your own commitments. Yes? Makes sense, right? I think I'm waiting for the camera to nod its head. It's become such an animate part of our engagement here. And yes, by all means, whether you engage or remove, continue to confront your attachment and your weakness. It's okay. You're a human being. Continue to be a human being. That's what you're here for this time. And then the last question that we have is, can you please give specific guidance on how those who are directly harmed by someone else's sexual misconduct that they did not intend or initiate, for example, unwanted touching or rape, can purify this specific suffering through an understanding of karma? Well, I'm not sure what's meant by the understanding of karma part of this, but let me see how I can respond in the way that I can understand the question. Thank you very much for giving us this question, because there are many, many people who are dealing with this on both sides, people who have harmed others through sexual misconduct and people who've been harmed through sexual misconduct. So it's come up a lot in this country and in others, in the West at least, in relation to the spiritual teachers who have been exposed for sexual misconduct and the harm that they've caused in their sanghas. And in treating that in our book, I spoke of what I call holy humanity of our teachers and ourselves, and how we come, speaking of gurus and true teachers in our traditions, but not just the Buddhist tradition. And I know that's not what you're asking about here in your question, but I'm going to start here. And I speak about how the situations can be confusing when there are power differentials and differentials in terms of trust, relationship, and so on. But that we are all, as adults, and we're talking about adults here, not about children, I think. If there are children involved, it's an emergency and has to be dealt with as an emergency, in my opinion. But if there are adults involved and there's some appearance of consensuality, or at least the presumed ability of the adult to step away from the situation if she or he chose to do that, I want to just say that we are all in our adult relationships responsible for our choices. And it's very important karmically for us to be aware of that. Our responsibility for our choices, regardless of how confusing the situation is. And that's not to say that somebody can't be treated in a way that seems to render them a victim. But in fact, in these kinds of situations, and as in all situations, and this is the karmic perspective for sure, there is no victim and there's no perpetrator. There are relationships unfolding karmically over time. And through lifetimes, if we think in that way. And we can see when we are experiencing harm in a relationship, we can see the point at which we were able to have clarity and the point at which we weren't. And really, it's very liberating for us simply to see and take note of that and acknowledge it without recrimination of oneself. And maybe one has anger and so on towards a perpetrator, and understandably so. But for oneself, let's not engage in shame Let's not engage in what if to any particular degree. It can be harmful to the mind to do that. But to recognize circumstances, interrelationship of circumstances, causes and conditions, interdependence between, events and people, and take responsibility for the part that we can take responsibility for, that is very freeing and very empowering and growthful in and of itself. These situations are not always easy to exit, even when you see that there's harm being done, either for the person who's abusing or the person who's being abused. Both are caught in their own karmic cycle. They're both caught there momentarily. There's room for a lot of error in human relationships. There's lots of different kinds of abuse. And there are lots of ways to bring such relationships to a close, if not to a point of clarity and recognition. And there's no obligation to seek reconciliation necessarily when one has experienced abuse with somebody, but you can have clarity. You can have clarity. It takes time sometimes. Again, from experience, I find that it takes time sometimes. Repeating cycles of seeing oneself engaging in relationships or activities that have similarities to each other and recognizing the common patterns. And then at a certain point, I wouldn't be in these repetitions of patterns had I not established a tendency in that direction through repeated karmic seeds of this same kind of behavior, whether it's the being abused or the abusing. And so right here, right now, I look that in the face and I say, I see my part in it. Doesn't mean I'm responsible for my own abuse. It means that I'm responsible for my choices. I see my part in it, and I'm not going to do that again. And that is beginning to, in the instant that you see that, the karma begins to clear, not from the past karma, which must be lived out, the fruitions of that past karma, but the mind becomes very finely tuned to see the very, very beginnings of behavior of body, speech, and mind that would allow you to become again somebody who's in a situation who's abused, or to become again somebody who's abusing. Again, the work always comes back to being our work in our minds. That's where we have the work, that's where we can work, and that's where we must work. For clarity, and for courage, and for compassion, including ourselves. Clarity, courage, compassion with ourselves as well. I don't know if I went afield from the question. Let me read the question again. Hold on. Well, you're asking how the specific suffering can be purified through an understanding of karma. I think I spoke of that. I think I spoke to that a bit. Nothing comes from nothing. We've met before. We've met before, whether in the same kinds of situations or not, but to take advantage of someone in an intimate way through sexuality, someone who was, for whatever reason, their own karma and personality and so on, not resistant enough to be able to prevent the abuse, that's your karma if you're the abuser. And to be victimized, so to speak, that's in quotations, is also the playing out of your karma. So there's nothing here in these situations that on the face of it, when we look at it without understanding karma at all, there's nothing here that is easy to comprehend or to deal with or to recover from. But when we understand it in the framework of karma, we understand something that is more evolutionary in terms of our development mentally and spiritually, that over time we become more able to see the seed causes of our behavior, whether it's to abuse or to be abused. All of that is liberating if we take responsibility for it when we see it. If we don't, we repeat. That's what a karmic habituation means. The karmic tendency is established by over and over and over again laying down the same seed of cause. The situation may look different, the characters may be entirely different, and so on, but the same seed of cause will produce the same result unless it's changed. So for something that causes harm, stop. For being harmed, take care of yourself. And both, harmer and harmed, be honest. Look yourself right in the face and see what you need to see. Take responsibility for it. Be very forgiving and compassionate with yourself. You may or may not choose to forgive the other person. I don't have a prescription about that I would ever give somebody else. But compassion can always arise in the heart and in the mind, because compassion is not an emotion, it's an acknowledgement of the shared experience of being a being in existence, and how difficult that is and how complicated it can be. So go for what's simple. See what is, acknowledge it, generate compassion, and take responsibility. That's where the power lies, in that choice. Okay? Okay. These questions, each of them, we could have a whole session on each of those questions. They're very important things that you're bringing up. I wish that it were possible to sit and talk for hours about these things, but actually it's probably better to talk for minutes and then practice. I have one more piece that I want to read you. We're at the end of our time, but I want to read you this piece. It's an expression of what I call implacable love, love that will not be stopped in the face of confounding darkness, confusion, and fear, calling forth courage and love, implacable love. It's a piece called Thanks by M.S. Merwin, who was a poet laureate of the United States for a while. I don't know if he's still living, I'm not sure, I think not. So I'm just going to recite this poem for you, and then we'll do our closing prayers. Okay. Listen. With the night falling, we are saying thank you. We are stopping on the bridges to bow from the railings. We are running out of the glass rooms with our mouths full of food to look at the sky and say thank you. We are standing by the water, thanking it. Standing by the windows looking out in our directions. Back from a series of hospitals, back from a mugging. After funerals, we are saying thank you. After the news of the dead, whether or not we knew them, we are saying thank you. Over telephones, we are saying thank you, in doorways and in the backs of cars and in elevators, remembering wars and the police at the door and the beatings on stairs, we are saying thank you. In the banks, we are saying thank you. In the faces of the officials and the rich, and of all who will never change, we go on saying thank you, thank you. With the animals dying around us, taking our feelings, we are saying thank you. With the forests falling faster than the minutes of our lives, we are saying thank you. With the words going out like cells of a brain, with the cities growing over us, we are saying thank you faster and faster. With nobody listening, we are saying thank you, we are saying and waving. Dark though it is. Thank you. Thank you for this time to be together. Thank you for this way of being together, just simply present, with and without bodily appearance. Thank you for this intimate connection through the camera. Thank you for the support of the Garchin Institute that allows us to gather in this wonderful way, in this strange and apparently dark time, whose light is sometimes hidden but sometimes blazing forth. Thank you opens the door. So I'm very grateful to have been able to be here with you. Let's do our closing prayers. By this merit may I attain omniscience, having defeated the enemies, my wrongdoings. May I liberate all beings who are tossed in the ocean of samsara by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Whatever virtue sentient beings possess, whatever good they have done, will do, and are doing now, whatever goodness there may be, may it permeate all beings everywhere. By the virtue accumulated throughout the 3 times by others and myself, may all beings filling the reaches of space enter the gateway of the unexcelled path, and may they attain the Vajra holder's ground. By all the virtue actually performed and mentally created by myself and all sentient beings of the 3 times, may all beings of the 6 realms attain the 5 kayas and realize the primordial wisdom of the Buddhas in the Dharmadhatu mandala of the awakened mind. Glorious root guru, precious one who sits upon a lotus at my heart, hold me with kindness and grant me all accomplishment of enlightened body, speech, and mind. I pray for the excellent health of the Guru. I pray that he lives a supremely long life. I pray that his activities spread far and wide. Grant blessings that I may not be separate from my Guru. May the Buddha's teachings, the only source of benefit and happiness, endure long, and may the victory banner of longevity for those upholding the teachings be steadfast. May the sound of the great Dharma drum liberate all sentient beings from suffering. Please remain and teach the Dharma for infinite millions of kalpas. But in light of this powerful merit, may the aspirations of the benefactors and their circles be accomplished within this very life. May their obstacles be pacified, may everything be auspicious, and may their wishes be fulfilled according to the Dharma. Just as the hero Manjushri realized things as they are, and as did Samantabhadra too, I will follow in their path and perfectly dedicate all these virtues. As all such dedications have been praised as supreme by the victorious ones of the 3 times, I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue to excellent conduct. By the blessing of the Buddhas who attained the 3 kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging nature of reality, and by the blessing of the undivided Sangha community, may my prayers be fulfilled according to this dedication. By the virtues accumulated in the 3 times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the intrinsic root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious awakening. Great Vajradhara, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma, Lord Gampopa, Pamodrupa, and Lord Drikompa, may the auspiciousness of all the Kagyu Lamas prevail. glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage gurus, divine assembly of yidams, assemblies of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, heroes and heroines, yogini and her assembly of dakinis, all of you dwelling in the 10 directions, please heed me. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of attachment, hatred, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May thoughts of fame, reputation, respect, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. At the moment of death, may I not experience the suffering of being abruptly severed from this life. May I not suffer a terrible death. May I not die confused by wrong views. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind itself and in the crystal clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the Bardo. The long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. For this realm encircled by snow-covered mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. Tenzin Gyatso, Lord Chenrezig, may you remain steadfast until the end of samsara. And for Drikung Kyabgyun Chetsang Rinpoche, embodiment of the 3 jewels, great being who upholds and increases the teachings of the Shakya Lion, supreme are your activities of guiding others with your perfect deeds. May you, the precious Guru who accomplishes everything spontaneously, live long. And Drikung Kyabgyun Chungtsang Rinpoche, holder of the teachings of Lord Drikungpa, great Lord of the 3 jewels, through the power of your peerless compassion and the holy Dharma's peace and light, you bring relief to beings. May your life be long. The one known in the noble land as Aryadeva, emanated into the Gar clan of eastern Tibet as Chuningpa, the heart son of Jigten Gompo. May the life of glorious Garchen remain steadfast for 100 eons. And the long life prayer for His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche, composed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Crown of the Shakyas, kind friend to strangers. The 17 great Panditas, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Gampopa, Jigten Sumgon, and their lineage heirs, please bestow good fortune and auspiciousness. Protector Amitayus, transcendent Lord, who grants supreme life, everlasting, stable and unchanging, and who diverts from untimely death anyone who merely hears your name or thinks of you, please bestow good fortune and auspiciousness. Living austerely in the higher training of discipline, full of compassion, that is the glory of those to be tamed, devoid of all grasping, never parting from Mahamudra's natural state, Hedun Tenpe Nyima, son of the teachings, may your life remain firm. May the teachings of the great Drikungpa Ratna Shri, Master of Interdependence, omniscient Lord of Dharma, who has seen all knowable things, be upheld until the end of cyclic existence through study, practice, hearing, contemplation, and meditation. Homage to Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion. Your 1,000 arms are the 1,000 wheel-turning kings. Your 1,000 eyes are the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate eon. Your love is boundless like space. I supplicate to the Bodhisattva Chenrezig. Om Mani Padme Hum Hri. May bodhicitta, the precious and supreme mind, arise in whom it has not yet arisen. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase, higher and higher. And the short prayer to be reborn in the blissful land of Amitabha. Emaho. In the center is the wondrous Buddha of boundless light. To his right is Chenrezig, the Lord of great compassion, and to his left is Vajrapani, the Bodhisattva of great might. They are surrounded by an inconceivable assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immeasurable peace and happiness is the pure land of great bliss. When I and all beings pass from this life, may we be born in that land, unhindered by another samsaric birth, and may we then behold the face of Amitabha, boundless light. May all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions bless this aspiration, that it may be accomplished without hindrance. Tejata Pansagriya Awa Bodhanaya Soha. And then Shantideva's verse. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. So we're ending a bit early. It's just the way it turned out. I'm so happy we've been able to be here together. My deep thanks to Padma, to Christina, to Billy, to Uno, to Dami, for allowing this to happen so smoothly and so gracefully. Thank you so very much. Yeah. And to all of you who were able to join us, thank you so much. This is interdependence. You were here because we were here, and we're here because you're here. That's the way it works. Let us continue to call for the teachings. Let's continue to give the teachings. Everybody has some Dharma to share. Whatever has been meaningful for you in your own work, you can share that with others in a way that isn't sectarian at all, but simply says, here's what I've benefited from. Here's what helps me when I'm in confusion. Here's what lifts me when I'm in the dark. No pounding on the drum and saying, Buddhism, Buddhism, Buddhism. So, just, oh, love. Oh, compassion. Oh, wisdom. Oh, interdependence. We're here together. And only for a moment. Only for a moment. So let us be fully present, radically present in the moments that we can share. Thank you.